My Brooklyn Grandmother from The Lost Garden by Lawrence Yep. During my early years of writing, one of the strongest influences on my life had been my grandmother, and it was inevitable that she should also affect my writing. As I said, she lived in Brooklyn Place, so that I sometimes thought of her as my Brooklyn grandmother. I didn't always know what to make of my grandmother, and I don't think she always knew what to make of me. We were like two wrestlers on a slippery mat, where the true victory would have lain in a mutual embrace that would have supported one another. But it was as if we were oiled, our hands slipping even as we tried to grip one another. Most of the time, though, it didn't matter how different I was. She accepted her Americanized grandchild, and the way she expressed that love was with food. As the youngest, I would often be seated next to her at a family banquet, so she would, of course, heap my plate with food. If I didn't clear the plate, she was bound to think something was wrong with the food, so I would dutifully make my way through the pile of food. However, if I made the mistake of turning to say something to someone else, I would find the plate heaped up once again. Eating with my grandmother took a certain amount of concentration. My grandmother had become a great cook, and, like any good cook, my grandmother was careful about her praise. The highest compliment she gave to another cook was to allow how Aunt Mary's cooking wasn't bad. Like all good cooks, my grandmother was especially particular about the ingredients. For one thing, she preferred small sweet potatoes, eating those with gusto. She was fussiest, though, about rice. One day, she asked me to help her in the kitchen, which was her way of saying that she was going to teach me. First, she announced we were going to wash the rice. In the old days, washing rice was wise because I'm told they used talcum on the grains. Even now, it's wise to wash the rice at least once to see what might come up. My grandmother had me pour lukewarm water into a pot of rice and swirl my hand around in it. Instantly, the water turned milky, and she had me look alertly for stray bits of chaff or even the occasional pebble that might slip by the processing machines. Then, setting the lid over most of the pot, I had to pour the water out gently. However, when I asked her what the next step was, she told me that the rice wasn't clean yet, and to refill the pot with lukewarm water and repeat the process. By the sixth time, the water was clear no matter how often I swirled my hand around. Even then, that wasn't enough. I remember my fingers were wrinkled by the time she declared the dirt was gone, as were most of the vitamins and nutritional elements as well. My grandmother, like most experienced cooks, never used exact measurements. It was a pinch of this or a handful of that. When she had me add water the final time, she rested her fingertip on the surface of the rice until the water came up almost to the knuckle of her index finger. Then the rice was allowed to soak for a half hour before cooking. The rice was brought to a boil, stirred once with a spoon, and then allowed to simmer for 20 minutes. The result was rice of just the right consistency and density. Along with the cooking lessons, some of my grandmother's own personality soaked into me. I've never been able to abide instant rice, which tastes mushy to me. Brown rice tastes musty, and I've never been able to get the hang of a modern rice cooker. Instead, I still make rice basically the way my grandmother showed me, even to measuring the water in the pot with a knuckle, though I only wash the rice once now. I think some of the fussiness over the rice carries over into my writing, forcing me to write several drafts of a book before I'm satisfied. As expressions of her love, she kept me well supplied with what I used to call potato chip fish, but which was really called dai, salted sand dabs, a small flat fish from Monterey that I have never been able to find since the Chinese fishing colony there disappeared. The flesh was denser and saltier than regular salted fish, hom yi. However, it was something as humble and homely and unlikely as that taro root that called out the artist in her. She made many tasty and delightful dishes out of taro root. But I especially remember how she would take a taro root, cut a slender thread from it, and skillfully turn the root, making the thread grow longer until she had enough to make a small ball. Into this would go onions and bits of meat, and she would deep fry the whole concoction. Later, when I had left San Francisco to go to college, she always sent me boxes of special treats, from my favorite cookies to preserved plums to lop xiong, the latter of which I cooked on a hot plate with rice in my dorm room. Much to my delight, her care packages followed me all across America.